Hello and welcome to another episode of the Montessori Moments podcast. My name is Elias Rodriguez and I'll be your host. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Bryan Stevenson. He's a really creative and out-of-the-box thinker. He finds ways to intertwine his love of music to concepts in the workplace. And when you experience something like it, you're not really prepared for it and are surprised how much you enjoy it and how much it makes sense. So I hope that you really enjoyed today's episode and that you find out how he gets a little bit of that creativity and is able to bring that into the workplace. Without further ado, here is Bryan Stevenson. Hey, Bryan, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great, Elias. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm calling from Southern California on a beautiful day. How about you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Myerstown, Pennsylvania, so South Central Pennsylvania, and it is a beautiful day here as well. Probably a little cooler than it is out there, but
maybe. Yesterday it was raining. I woke up and it was raining. It was so odd. So yeah, Today it's just a gorgeous day. Days after the rain are always beautiful, clear, and a little bit of clouds, but not bad.
Nice.
I see you want to comment about my haircut, and yes, my wife did cut my hair during this pandemic.
And I see you want to comment about my lack of haircut. This is not for wanting to groom. I actually enjoy having long hair. So.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, during this thing, there's no barbers open, so I've had to.
Right. I'm set. I'm all good. I don't have any issues with it at all.
You're perfectly
people
prepared.
Freaking out about it. I'm like, what's the deal?
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Well, Bryan, today we're going to do a little bit of an interview to get to know you a little bit more, and maybe get to find out what your motivation comes from and some of your interests. So I'll lob you an easy question as I've been lobbing the others. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Reading, Pennsylvania, and I grew up in the town that I live in, on the property that I live in with my wife and our kids and my mom and dad. Actually, my mom and dad lived with my wife and I. So I grew up here, spent a little bit of time in the Baltimore area. But then moved back home, and this is where I've been ever since.
Pennsylvania through and through.
Through and through, absolutely.
Awesome. And what are some hobbies or interests that you really like?
Well, it's an interesting question. I have a large family, so I have 6 children. I have 11 grandchildren, and so my family, my wife, and my kids they mean the world to me, and so that takes up obviously a lot of time. As far as hobbies go, my life is one big hobby, Elias. I mean, I'm a musician. I pastor a church. So all of the things that make me me are things that I do all the time, and I enjoy every minute of it. So really, I'm a passionate connector. So I love to connect people to good music. I love to connect people with friendship. I love to connect people in their faith walk. I just love connecting. So pretty much if I'm not being with my kids and my family or playing music or pastoring the church, then I get to work with Monarch. So it's been great. And then I just further connect with people. So it's one big hobby for me.
So surrounded by people is basically your sweet spot.
Absolutely. I need some space. You know, I have a recording studio here at the house, so my space. A lot of times I'll steal away for an hour or so, work on some music, and then I'm back to good. I'm refueled and I'm good to go.
That's awesome. You got all the necessary formula to get yourself on a good spot every day.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned a recording studio. Do you record music that you compose on your own?
I do. I record my own music in the process of recording my 4th album. Over the last couple of years, more than anything else, I've been doing audiobooks. Have hooked up with a couple publishers and have people come in. My wife is an amazing hostess, so she just has the gift of hospitality, and we love having writers come in and they read their books, and we have fun getting to know them and listening to them read their books.
No kidding. Wow. How cool. That's really cool. And if you had to guess if you had to label what kind of music is your sweet spot or the kind that you really like to sing, what would that be?
That's a good question. So my influences are the rock and blues and like Blue Eyed Soul, that kind of thing. So my band is called Redbeard Soul, and we have a little bit of all that going on. So it's some rock, it's some blues, it's some soul. I write about what I'm passionate about. So it's a lot of songs about my family, a lot of songs about written songs for each one of my kids.
Wow.
It's like to be a grandpa, those kinds of things. And I just enjoy it, and it seems to connect with people.
I love it. It's flowing through you. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how did a musician and a pastor of a church and a father of 6 and grandfather of 11 join up with Monarch Pathways?
So some years ago, I was the worship pastor at a local church, and I had met Gary Johnson. And Gary actually approached me about taking private guitar lessons. I was a private guitar instructor for 27 years, have been retired from that for the last 3. But Gary started taking private lessons. He took for a while, and he kept prompting me with Gary style questions. So anybody who knows Gary knows that he has a way of drawing people out and seeing them become really the best versions of themselves. And that became really intriguing to me. So fast forward a little bit, and Gary had started to work with Joe Karachi at Monarch, and reached out to me to see if I could brainstorm with him ways to incorporate music with the workplace. And it was an interesting concept, and we sat and talked a little bit about it. Over the years, we've developed some unique approaches to help folks hear what the place of employment would sound like by using an algorithm that I created and the Gallup Q12. And so that was really the jumping off point. And that was fun because it just helped people to look at things from a different perspective. And we realized that we were onto something because people really gravitated toward having music in the midst of conversation about work. It just hit them on a different level.
Wow. That is very unique.
So that was about, I want to say it's about 3.5, 4 years ago.
And would you say that when people, see you coming in with music, when they hired someone to come into their work, are they kind of giving you the face like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
He's got a guitar.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, one of my very first trips with Gary was to a barge company in the western part of Pennsylvania, and they're the 3rd largest barge company in the U.S. And a lot of really, what you might expect from a boatyard, guys that were rough and tough, and they're welders, and and they walk in, and there I am with a guitar, long-haired guy with a beard, and they're like,
what is going on?
The expletives flew that day. They wanted to know what kind of meeting they showed up for. But it was interesting in that amount of time, that in that short 45-minute meeting, from being completely flummoxed by seeing a musician to realizing that this was a connection on a whole different level than they'd ever considered before. And it helped them to really look at the work that they did as an art form, and not just a job.
Well, I've consistently heard that actually after that you're done with whatever experimental music concept is going in, people really enjoy it and can't wait to have you back. And that's the kind of experiences they're having after that.
Yeah, it's interesting. If we can get past a very skeptical executive crew, a lot of times the frontline folks are really engaging with the music. So it's been really awesome to do that.
Well, that sounded like a great moment. Is there any other moments that kind of stick out with maybe one of your music experiences?
Yes. Most recently with Roundtree, actually. I've been so blessed. We have a different kind of a viewpoint, I think, at Monarch when it comes to seeing challenges. We typically don't freak out. It's more like, hey, what do we have to offer, and what can we do to bring the world closer together? And so we brainstormed a little bit, and some of the folks, yourself included, out there at Roundtree, thought it'd be a great idea if we could talk to some residents through iPad. And one of my favorite moments, one of your residents, we were talking to them over iPad, and I would play them a song of their choice. So I gave a list of songs to you and said, would you, you could go ahead and you could tell them that these are some options, but I'm open to suggestions. And with my background in teaching, I've taught all sorts of songs over the years. And one of your ladies asked for the song "Pretty Woman," and I don't know. I don't even know how old this wonderful woman was, but in her 80s or 90s, and she asked for "Pretty Woman," and it just flooded back to me. I pulled up the lyrics and I played her "Pretty Woman," and just to see the smile on her face, and to know that we really made a connection, and she just giggled like a schoolgirl, and it was so cute. And so that actually has become one of the songs that is requested at Roundtree. I'm not sure if that woman has gone out and told the other ladies in Roundtree that this long-haired guy from Pennsylvania will sing Roy Orbison to them, but I'll tell you what, it's fun. It was really fun.
So actually, she's 102.
What?
And
no!
Yes, I am.
Oh my goodness.
Happy to report that she is bragging, and she's definitely letting people know that she was serenaded live on the technology. Definitely doesn't say it's an iPad. Live on technology from a guy in Pennsylvania serenaded me with "Pretty Woman."
That's awesome. So here's the thing for me, whether it's the frontline employee or the executive suite or the residents or patients when I go into hospitals or the workers at a barge company, I just love to see people become the very best for today that they can become. And obviously there's many layers to that, and so for me, that just really depends on what the person needs for that day, and to know that a 102-year-old woman needed to hear "Pretty Woman," and that I was able to deliver with that is a moment I will not soon forget.
That is very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm gonna branch just a bit because you mentioned connector. That's from personality lingo. I know that we also did a disc. What would you be on the disc?
I'm about as high I as you can get on the disc. And when I'm operating under pressure, the D will rise up a little bit, but for the most part, I'm about as high an I as you can get on the disc.
Okay. So how do you think people might describe you if you thought, how do people think of me? What would you say that they would use?
They would probably say that I'm passionate about people. When I'm no matter what I'm doing, it's driven by something internally where I just want folks to be able to really engage with the best version of themselves. So when I'm playing music in public, I do a show that folks tell me what they'd like to hear, and to me, it's all about the folks that are listening to me. It's not just about what I enjoy doing, because honestly, I do enjoy the music part of it, but I enjoy seeing people smile, and I guess I'm probably a pretty high empath. So folks would say that he's very empathetic and he sees things
Gotcha.
a little differently in that way.
Yeah, and you said what a great environment at work to be hearing music, and that's just awesome. So there's been a lot of emphasis that, well, Gary corrected me. I said a little. It's a lot of emphasis on Montessori and Monarch pathways.
Yeah.
Is there anything that really struck you about Montessori when you started to learn it and adapt it and use it in the workplace?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. Actually, my first real connection with Montessori would have been some years ago. I was the assistant pastor of a church, and the pastor of the church asked me to look into some Montessori for our children at the church. And so I did that, and I thought it was really interesting. But there wasn't, the book that he gave me didn't give me a whole lot of practical, it didn't give me a practical approach. It just gave some theory. And so I kind of shelved that in my mind. And then in being introduced to Dr. Camp, he actually saw a lot of what I already did, pointed out to me that the things that I did just intuitively were Montessori principles. And I didn't really realize that when I'm in public and I play an all request show, I'm really giving folks choice. I'm asking them to take a look and let me know what they would like When I'm sitting one-on-one with a guitar student, I'm moving at their pace. I don't teach a curriculum, I teach a student. Those were the things that I've had deep inside of me for, like I said, it's been 30 years since I started doing guitar lessons. And I always felt that. And so some of these things are just very much, like I mentioned, they're intuitive for me. And Dr. Camp pointed that out. And the more I've gotten into it, the more that I've studied the 3 pillars and the 12 principles, the more I've studied how we can really set the room, we can set the environment for people. The more that I've realized this is really who I'm created to be and what I'm created to perpetuate. So it's been exciting because it very much just affirms things that I've learned myself. Yeah, so that's kind of how that whole thing has evolved. And the more I get into it, the more it's not aha moment for me. It's more like, yep, that's what I've been doing. So
and it makes sense that it's working.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, having given private guitar instructions, I mean, I have players all over the world that stay in touch with me that have gone on to professional careers. And I think that a lot of times for me as an instructor, I've seen a lot of people feel like they have to, that their mark is how many students they have, and that's the mark that they leave on the world. And I would rather think of how many students have gone on to make more students, and how many students have gone on to really enjoy their lives and professional careers. And it's not about me. So that's part of the Montessori principle. Is very much focused on the person who you're in contact with. So respecting the person, showing dignity to the person, really honoring the person and seeing them be everything that they can be.
Yeah, my goodness, it's flowing out of you. It sounds like this is incredibly natural for you. That's wonderful.
It is. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Bryan, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time today. I hope you enjoyed
Absolutely.
it. I really got to learn a little bit more about you, and I can't wait to hopefully after this is all done, get back together and hear some more live tunes.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Looking forward to it, Elias. Thank you so much.